This is Issues Paninyaya, a Chengeto Zimbabwe initiative supported by I Am Swedish Development Partner. Issues Paninyaya seeks to challenge the status quo on various social issues.
It's a Monday night and my pleasure to welcome you back to another episode of Issues Paninyaya supported by I Am Swedish Development Partner. Our mandate is to challenge the status quo on various social issues. My name is Rejoice Naranda Makawa. Last week we talked about HIV, a hard topic with hard truths but also very real. Our two major takeaways from the HIV discussion were the importance of disclosure, the importance of each person taking care of their own sexual health and well-being, and the importance of early and regular testing. We've had listeners coming back and saying, but ndikataura kuti ndine chirwere ndiri kubva ndarambwa. And that's a discussion that we need to take forward and see, is disclosure the best thing to do if it's going to lose you a potential partner for the rest of your life? Please let us have your feedback as the show progresses. We're on 0773910095 on WhatsApp, at Issues Paninyaya on Twitter, on our Facebook page, Issues Paninyaya. Tonight we move on to a different issue, a day-to-day issue, and one that manifests in many different ways. What is a parent? I looked into the dictionary to find a definition, and it's defined as generally the mother or father of the one who performs the parenting role, that of caretaker, looking after, rearing, raising, nurturing, and bringing up. There are different facets to parenting, all enmeshed and intertwined in different variables: biological, psychological, social, and financial. Parents provide physical care to ensure provision of nutrition, shelter, and a safe environment. Parents are also tasked with providing an optimal environment where their children are safe, nurtured, and supported. However, raising children properly is more than just food and shelter. It also is about providing them with a good education and ensuring that they are equipped with knowledge and character in preparation for facing the world. A lot of us will send our children to the best schools possible in order to ensure that their futures are secure. Tonight we are focusing on parenting from the perspective of how far a parent will go if they think that their right to parent and provide for their child is threatened. What are the battles that parents find themselves fighting in support of their young ones? Are those battles warranted? We have in studio a parent, a very passionate parent, might I add, who believes that his actions over a certain occurrence justify the depths that he has gone to in defense of his daughters. Mr. Mudekunye, good evening and welcome to Issues Paninyaya.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Mudekunye, you have a case that is ongoing at the moment with Gateway School. But before we even get to that, would you like to just give us a background of who you are, your family setup, the family composition, your children, ages, etc., etc.?
Okay, thank you. I am a dad. I'm married. My wife, her name is Kudzanai. We've been married since 2001, so that's 17 years. And we've got 3 daughters, one who's turning 15 this year. She's in Form 3 at Arundel School. And then I've got one who's in grade 6. She's 11 at Gateway Primary School. And then I've got a young one, another daughter, who is in grade 3 at Bishopsley Preparatory Girls' School.
Right. In my introduction, I outlined my own analysis of what a parent is and the role that they play in the lives of their offspring. What is your deduction of parenting?
I think for me, parenting is a lifelong, almost a duty to defend and protect and look after the welfare of your offspring. And I don't think it's a job that should be taken lightly. I think it's something you should be thinking about and working on every single day. What am I doing? How am I doing it? What needs or issues may my children have, and that kind of thing. So I think it really is, and only when you do become a parent, that when your first child is born, from that moment and you realize when you hold that baby in your hand that, gosh, I'm responsible, or myself and my wife are responsible for this person's well-being.
What do you, if you were to describe or to outline your role as a father to your three girls, how would you define that role?
Well, the most important role is my wife, obviously. Let me get that out first. But as a father, I think, there are no absolutes in this, but I think the father usually is most important when it comes to external, even though they have a role on internal. Then the mother really deals with internal, although she can also have a role on external. What I mean is, when there are external threats, that's usually when us fathers kick into gear, and we're very hypersensitive to that. Normally, with day-to-day things, we take our lead, so we have our role, but we take our lead, well, in my case, take the lead from my wife, the mother. What are we doing, what's best, etc. When something external comes along, that's when you call up the military, and then they come and do what needs to be done. But I think it is it's almost a 50-50 thing, in that it doesn't mean that fathers have no role in nurturing and loving. I think they do, and it's very important, especially in my case with daughters. They always tell you that a daughter, when she grows up, depending on what kind of relationship she had with her father, that's going to determine how she's going to be and how she's going to relate to men in general and the world at large. So I think we do have it, as I said, it's it's something you have to always be thinking about. What is best, what can I do? But I do think it's there's no book that's going to tell you how to parent. There are books out there, but usually you, as a parent, you learn and you see from your own experiences in your own family growing up, and your partner's experiences, or your wife or your husband's experiences, etc., etc.
Whilst we're there, do you want to just back up a little bit and think about your own childhood and the role that your father played in your own life compared to the role that you're playing in your daughter's lives so many years later?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I've always, maybe I've been fortunate. I grew up in a stable household, father and mother always there. I never, like I hear, you hear stories of people's upbringing, oh, my dad was always at work, or that kind of thing. You see, I never had that. My dad worked, my mum worked, but we had enough contact time with both of them that there was a balance. So I am rather envious of my father's fathering, or from my experience growing up. I really try to emulate him, and also the way we were parented, even by my mother. So it's always been something where I'm always feeling like I'm not as good as they were, but I try every day to be what they were to me as a child, because I don't think I have any childhood traumas formed out of parenting with my parents. I think it was a very good experience, and I just want to, if I could even do half of that, I think I would have done very well.
You've answered my next question, because it was going to be, you sound like you had really good role models
Yes.
of parents when you were growing up, because I was going to ask how that has impacted how you parent your own children.
I mean, yes, it's and the truth is, I mean, I'm a grown man now, but when I'm in the presence of my parents,
You're still a
I'm
child.
still a child.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm still learning, and I can only say their parenting has impacted the way I parent in a very positive way. And also, I would just like to mention that it's fortunate that my wife also came out of a stable family, very similar in terms of upbringing to the way I was brought up. So even when we're in the household, we don't have a lot of debates that some couples have about, oh, I feel when you're with the child it should be like this. Some of it with us is automatic, because our upbringing was so similar. Our way of thinking in terms of what we should do and shouldn't do is, we've never had conflict on those kinds of lines.
But what is your view with regards to education of the girl child and ensuring that her agency as an adult in later life is secured?
The thing we always grew, when we were growing up, we were always told, because I have sisters and brothers, we were always told, and my father and mother never differentiated between the boys and the girls. We were always told that education, getting an education is important because it's the one thing that no one can take away from you. What you put into your mind, no one can take out. So we grew up feeling that education was not the goal in itself, but it would unlock a lot of things. And because of that, with our children, both myself and my wife, we've carried on that idea that, you know, education is the only thing you can take with you. And that's the thing that can maybe not necessarily guarantee your future, but at least give you some form of security that if you work hard, you may be able to survive and maybe prosper in society, wherever you want to be. So we and because I have 3 girls, we have always felt that that's the one thing we can give them. So we would sacrifice everything to give them a good and proper education all the way up to university and beyond if necessary.
We are on Issues Pandinyaya, where we are talking to a parent who's talking about how he was parented as a child and how that has impacted how he parents. We are now going to go on and talk about how external threats can impact responses and reactions from a parent. Please take part in the conversation. We are on 0773 910095 at Issues Pandinyaya on Twitter, on our Facebook page, Issues Pandinyaya. Mr. Mudekunye, the hashtag #MeToo campaign, what inspired it?
A lot of powerful men have been getting away with a lot of bad things for a very, very long time. And this era we've entered into, this 21st century, has been the information age. And what that has meant is that no one has a monopoly on information. People are able to have their own platforms. As a result, it's exposed a lot of bad things, and the only, I suppose, the reaction to these bad things, which is mainly abusing people, powerful women, powerful men abusing their position, mainly against women, but also against men, in order to, you know, whether it's sexual favors, whether it's this, in order for them to say, okay, this is quid pro quo. So if you quid pro quo, rather. So if you sleep with me, I will give you this part. If it's a Hollywood movie, or if it's in Zimbabwe, it's if you want this job, you have to, this is your interview, and part of your interview is you have to, you know, sleep with me. So my analysis of what the Me Too movement actually was a reaction to that, to one, expose men, and also to let victims know, who are mainly women, that it's not just you, it's me too. And the more people that come out or came out and said, this happened to me, this happened to me, this is how these vile individuals in our society were exposed, and it's still ongoing. Because sadly, although some cases are extreme, in a lot of cases, some people think it's normal. It's expected, and that's what the real tragedy is. If you agree that Me Too was about powerful people, mainly men, abusing that power for their own gain, even at the expense of people's rights, then in the case of what was going on at Gateway, where we had a situation where a lady who was running a tuck shop, her name is Mrs. Marinda Fenesi, was basically locked out of a tuck shop on a specific day and told you cannot get on the premises. And she had no recourse. What could she do? They'd shut it down. She went through all the procedures, rent board, etc., 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 even one in court. And these things were appealed, you know, I suppose it's due process. But the result was that the school then decided that the parent who seems to be defending this lady, Mrs. Fenesi, the most, maybe he's the problem. So we'll just expel his kids from the school.
What prompted you? What was the motivation for you to support and to rally and to root for the tuck shop lady?
You know, it's pretty strange that she ran that tuck shop since 2011. I happen to have a sweet tooth, so when I pick up my children in the afternoon, I'll usually pop in there to, you know, get a sweet or something, and she had good stuff. And over time, over the years, I just got to know her, you know, when she was a pleasant lady. And then the year of 2017, I started noticing a change in her. She seemed more stressed. She seemed, you know, everything was just not right. And so I asked her what's going on, and she would explain to me, this has happened, the school or the parents association committee are kicking me out, and they're not giving me reasons, and they're trying to force me to sign documents to agree to leave, etc. And that to me bothered me, because she had no one. She had no one advocating on her behalf. She didn't even quite understand the law of commercial tenants. She actually thought that maybe they have a right to do it. I'm being persecuted, but they can do what they want. So when I saw that, I thought to myself and said, you know what? This is a lady in the world. I have 3 daughters. 20 or 30 years from now, maybe one of my daughters will find themselves in this very situation. And what will they do? And I knew, because I understood the law, I understood what her position was in terms of the law. And I advised her and said, look, at the end of the day, you have the right to due process. But at the same time, everybody going through a struggle needs a crutch, needs someone to be strong for them. And I felt at that time that was, you know, my calling, if you want to use that word. Although I didn't think it would go as far as it did, I just thought, you know, sometimes someone just needs a pat on the shoulder, say, no, you know, keep going, or that kind of thing. And that's really how it started. Very benign and very, you know, nothing sinister. No, I never even thought it would get to the level of the school beyond the Parents Association.
Okay, and then maybe how it then progressed from your being just a crutch and offering an ear and maybe just a bit of advice, to you now being fully embroiled in a battle with the school. Do you want to just tell our listeners how that all panned out?
The day we did a petition to try and support her, we got, you know, over 95 signatures, of which 73 were bona fide Gateway parents. Literally 30 minutes after the event where we did the petition happened, the then chairman of the Parents Association committee, a man called Dr. Justice Maruisa, sent out a WhatsApp basically denigrating me to all the parents. And I found that very strange, because number one, because obviously their mentality was, we do not allow petitions. And they thought, to their mind, I was doing something criminal, even though obviously petitions are allowed under our constitution. So they felt, but I felt as a parent, it's not proper for you to go and blast somebody to all the parents in the school on WhatsApp, because they have a school WhatsApp system which they use. And that bothered me, because I said to myself, man, you know, if they can just do this to anybody. And then it also informed a lot of what Mrs. Fernese had been telling me about her treatment up until that point, because they were now living up to her description of how she was being treated. Now, my reaction to being attacked was, I'm not someone who gets embarrassed or who goes small. What I do is, if you're going to attack me, you're going to have to prove that I did something wrong, and I'm also going to prove that you have done something, that you are actually wrong. And this is how it all began. And then beyond that, after the chairman sent that WhatsApp, the school acting headmaster then sent out correspondence on email, etc. Basically, they thought they were going to drown me with negative information to parents, and then I would be, as a person, would just feel, oh, this is embarrassing, let me turn away. They didn't realize that just emboldened me, because then I realized there's something very wrong with the leadership at this school. Because surely, if there's an issue, what you do is you do not go out and attack. The first thing is to try and resolve. But I suppose their attitude was, if we're going to resolve it, it has to be in our favor. And that already is a negotiation which is not on fair terms.
Also then became a part of the equation. Do you want to just talk us through that?
This whole petition started on the 17th, exactly a year ago, the 17th of March 2017. She was then locked out of the tuck shop as a result. I don't know. She was locked out in May, I believe on the 10th of May 2017. We then accelerated our support campaign for her, exposing all the things that the school was doing. What then happened was a lot of staff members, teachers, former parents, current parents started coming to me with a lot of information about things that they felt were going wrong at the school. So I, as a result, felt that, well, it would be good for me to inform the school of a lot of these things. And this is when we created a dossier. This dossier then went public, and then the Daily News got a hold of it, and the article got in the newspaper, and then I suppose I was labeled maybe an enemy of the state. From there, when we got into the third term, so I would say a few days before the third term of 2017, that's when I received a letter. Basically, they put all the contracts I'd signed with the school, and then that letter saying, the headmaster, Mr. Kevin Rickberg, wrote saying, having discussed with the trust, we are terminating your contract with the school.
For the girls?
For the girls, for both girls.
How did that make you feel when you read that letter?
To be honest with you, when I first read it, I started laughing because I knew at law this is not going to fly. Then I started thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to tell my wife? Then I was like, oh, and then I obviously went to see my lawyer. We discussed what our strategy was. We went to the Ministry of Education, spoke with my wife, explained it to her, and probably in the first, to her credit, maybe in the first 30 seconds of telling her, she paused. Then she said to me, whatever you have to do, I support you.
Okay.
And that made me feel very strong. And then we went ahead and decided, you know what, this school needs to be exposed because they're in the business of educating children,
now,
not in expelling them.
Do you think that your reactions were emotional from the perspective of a father, or do you think you were being objective after that initial receipt?
If it weren't for the fact that Marinda Fenese existed, it might have been harder for me to answer that because I wouldn't have had context. But my reaction to what had happened to my children was no different to how I felt that Marinda was being treated, because it informed my worldview. And in my worldview, I want a world where my daughters are safe. And even without an expulsion, a world where that lady could be treated that badly was a risk to my children anyway. So it wasn't emotional, it was actually very methodical. Because I did everything methodically. I even, decided how am I going to tell my wife the wording, etc., etc., etc. So I was very, very methodical. And I think, at the end of the day, in most things, you would rather, yes, emotion can come into it, but when you act, you have to act with thought, and you have to having carefully weighed everything. So I do not think at all I was emotional because, as I said, my emotions remained exactly the same as they were when I was dealing months before, just exclusively with this lady and helping her with the tuck shop and the petition.
Did you go on to then remove?
I was fortunate enough to get a place at Bishopsley Preparatory School. Thank you to Bishopsley for that, and thank you to the headmaster. So I pulled one. I took one out, but the other one I kept in there. And then the Ministry of Education, who I had gone to see the same day I got the letter, they paid a visit to the school, and it was clear that the expulsion was null and void. So my other daughter just returned to school as normal. What it really was those, to me, were just intimidation tactics. It was just them trying to flex their muscles. Maybe they expected me to come to them and beg, and as I guess if I can say a normal parent may have said, okay, look, let's put everything aside, please don't attack my children, just let them be in, what do you need me to do, etc. That is what I believe was the purpose of the expulsion, because it didn't stand, which means a headmaster wrote a letter expelling children, but the children are still at school. to me, that makes the headmaster out to be a fool.
Okay, all right. I won't second that, but I just want to understand, because when things like that happen, then we are coming in and saying, "Oh, you don't touch the girl child." How did it affect your children? Also, they have no idea.
They have no idea what was going on.
So when you moved your younger daughter, your youngest,
Yes.
What did you say to her? Why were you moving her from the school that you've been going to, where her sister was, to another school, to a different
Well,
school?
the truth is, I mean, Bishopsley is one of the best schools in the country, and it's a school we've tried to get into for a while, even from when my daughter, who's in Form 3, was a baby. You know, you do your applications years before, etc. So it was always mine and my wife's dream school, first choice. So getting the place was a no-brainer. Even if this had not happened, if they'd offered us a place, would have put her there. So they understood that, okay, this is a good opportunity, and of course a feeder into Arundel as well. So it was all positive. But we never. I mean, there was no mystery to the children. Everything has been normal. They don't know anything of what's going on, and we just said, okay, so you're going for grade 3, you'll be going to Bishopsley. I can't remember exactly what words my wife used, but to them it made sense. Issue. No, it wasn't an issue at all.
Okay, it's been all over and it's being talked about quite immensely. And in one of your many submissions, on the case, you described the system at Gateway as sexist and misogynist, and that's deep, you know. When somebody is misogynist, there's a deep hatred there for women. Do you want to just talk about that? Do you want to just elaborate?
I think, look, there are certain triggers that you look at. Now we're looking at it at our worldview. Here you have a school that's been around for 30 years. It's had the same headmaster for 30 years. They've had, I guess, a couple of deputy headmasters, or no, 2 or 3, I guess. And as a father who has daughters, your antennae are very, are always up and observing certain things. And this is for the period I've been there, I've never seen women in positions of authority at that school. You may have heads, I suppose you could have heads of department, but it's not real authority. Authority resides in headmaster, deputy headmaster, CEO of the trust, etc. And you don't, I never saw women in those positions. But further to the point, the way they treated Marinda, I just don't think people ganging up on someone to take away their rights, and being that she's a woman, and sometimes, some days I would get to the tuck shop and she will be literally in tears, crying. And what do? When you see a grown woman in tears out of fear, she would send me, so she would say to me, can you please come? They've come and they're telling me off. To me, that already tells me that there's something wrong, because even at home, so in the home, if you're a father, there may be certain things you are doing without being aware that, okay, maybe these are girls, or these are, there's certain things that are different, and then your wife will be able to say to you, oh, no, but for girl, you get where I'm coming from. Then you can correct yourself. I'm not saying you're doing something bad or something, it's just some things are different for girls and boys in the home as they're growing up. How can I put it? If it's swimming time, maybe boys can more comfortably change in front of their dad than girls. These little things. And you'll be conscious of them if you're in an environment that respects both sexes. That, what I would call possible abuse that was happening to Marinda, showed me that if there was a woman in leadership, she said, you can't, if men crowd around a woman and start talking, it's very easy for a woman to be intimidated more so than a man, because that's how we communicate. Look, you can do the research yourselves and see for yourselves how many women thrive and prosper there. What actually happens in terms of employees, staff, teachers, etc. There's a ceiling, and there shouldn't be a ceiling. Sky should be the limit. A woman could be deputy headmaster. A woman could be making serious decisions. What they do is, or what I perceived it as, was that it's almost just piecemeal things. Okay, she's the head of infants department, she's this, so we cover women, but in reality that's not really the case.
Patriarchy is a reigning world system. Even if you look at our national structures here, as women we are now beginning to talk about participation in public spaces, because it's a man's world. That's the reality of the world that we live in. The woman's space is prescribed to be somewhere else and not out there. So do you think that maybe you're probably overreacting?
This is a school. This is shaping young minds. This is a place where role models are going to be built. This is a place where children, their futures are starting to be nurtured. If there's one place where there should be clear equality, it's a school. I mean, we had, even in Zimbabwe, we now have this proportional representation, and they're trying to get where it's getting to 50-50 in terms of women and men in parliament. That's what they're aspiring to. What more a school? Because surely girls, are you telling me that I don't want my girls to grow up knowing that the only people in authority are men? Now, I'm not disrespecting patriarchy and the role of men and women if it's in a household or in a family, but what I am saying is, surely at a school, that's the one place where we should be able to see white people in leadership roles, black people in leadership roles, black women in leadership roles, white women in leadership roles, because that's what's going to inform our children's worldview. So I don't think it's an overreaction to expect equality at a school. Now, of course, the world at large, well, that's a different thing. But surely at a school where you're shaping minds, you want to show a world, you want to show an idealistic view of the world, that this is what can happen.
I totally agree with you, and a lot of issues there that sound very feminist. Are you a feminist, Mr. Mudekunye?
I believe in fairness. I know equality, and I mean equality at all levels, is not something that can be easily attained, but I believe in fairness. And if there's a group of people that have been unfairly treated in this world, it's women. But there are a lot of people who are unfairly treated. I've given you examples at Gateway, staff, etc., who are women and men. So, I don't know what the proper definition of a feminist is, and maybe feminists may say, why are you trying to join our party? But I will stand up for anyone who is being wrongly treated. I think an interesting question would have been, if that tuck shop lady had been a man who had been treated that way, would I have stood up and defended them the same? I don't know the answer to that question, but I like to believe that I would have.
You probably would have.
But the point is, so on the feminism thing, I believe in fairness. I know equality is not something that's easy to attain, but fairness has to be.
Now, the battle has been quite long. It started last year, and it spilled over into this year. Do you see an end to it?
Well, let them know that we are going to take this to the ends of the world. We will not stop, because what was done to this lady and what was done to my daughters was unfair. Even though the expulsion failed because I basically stood up to them, strictly speaking, there's still a letter out there that says your children are expelled, and I want that letter corrected on the record. I want that letter corrected. So we are going to take this to the... I think they I think they underestimated our resolve. There is no end to this until justice and fairness is achieved in the case of this lady and in the case of my daughters. And in fact, in the case of me, because what we didn't mention was that I was actually sued in court. They tried to put a gag order or an interdict on me, which they achieved for 3 months, and then it was thrown out in court, obviously. So they do not... my problem was, if you're a school, as a school educating children, one thing you should respect is the Constitution of Zimbabwe, because that's something you should be educating the children on. But if the administration have a lack of an understanding of that, then what children are they bringing up?
Just in closing, Mr. Mudekunye, would you like to just paint a picture to the listeners and to myself of the Zimbabwe that you would like to see your grandchildren growing up in?
If there were more parents who were brave, like those parents who signed that petition and stood up and stayed even when they were being called and questioned about, did you really sign this? Are you supporting it? If we have more people like that, I think the future of the Republic of Zimbabwe is bright. The problem is, a lot of people are just happy to see something wrong going on and sit in silence. So the Zimbabwe I envisage for my grandchildren would be a Zimbabwe where people are asking more questions of authority. People are making people in authority more accountable, because that is what is to be expected. So that is, you know, in a nutshell, would be my vision of the kind of Zimbabwe. Because once you have that, and everybody knows I'm accountable, what I do today, if I interview this lady and ask her for sexual favors in order to get that job, but I'm in a society where everything is being questioned and exposed, it's less likely that there are going to be any more Harvey Weinsteins. It may not eradicate all of them, but what it will mean is everyone will stop and ask the question. And I know a lot of people, a lot of good men, who are asking themselves, looking back a year, 10 years, and saying, was there ever a time when I was inappropriate? And that's a good thing, because we have to think about, maybe we're being inappropriate, going back to Me Too, without even realizing it, because it's something that, you know, has been going on from generation to generation to generation. So I want a Zimbabwe, or I would hope for a Zimbabwe, where people start to question authority, and people start to ask, why? No, this is wrong, but you have said we are free to do this, but then you've got this law that says we can't do that thing we're free to do. So these are the issues that need to be resolved, and you know, I don't want to get into politics and aligning laws with the Constitution, but that's really what it is. Let's get to a place of accountability.
Our takeaway from tonight's show is about a Zimbabwe where people ask why. A Zimbabwe where public figures and people in authority are accountable. A Zimbabwe where transparency is the norm. A Zimbabwe where fairness and equality reign. This has been Issues Paninyaya, where we endeavor to educate, to raise awareness, as well as influence change. My name is Rejoice Naraunda Makawa. Good night.
Participate on Issues Paninyaya on our WhatsApp platform 0773 910 095, at Issues Paninyaya Twitter handle, at Rejoice Nara Twitter handle. Visit our Facebook page, Issues Paninyaya. Issues Paninyaya, challenging the status quo.